It's a wonderful day in the homiehood, a wonderful day for a homie. Won't you be my homie to Taro? Serena is someone who works at the CRC, the Community Race Relations Committee here in Peterborough-Nogojiwanong. And Serena, could you maybe also introduce yourself in any other ways, such as like your pronouns or any intersections that you would like the audience to know about?
Sure, yeah. So again, that's Czarina Garcia. My pronouns are she and her. I am a second generation Filipinx Canadian, identify as woman. I'm also a mother, and I am a student at Trent. Hopefully not for much longer. Um, but yeah, I'm the coordinator at the CRC in the community. I wear a lot of hats, I guess. So I'm also a community healer, um, an Ayurveda yoga teacher and Reiki practitioner. Um, and I'm a medium, so that's always fun. Um,
Oh,
and
like not like a medium like t-shirt, but like a medium like you can channel.
like a spiritual, yeah, like I channel
Okay.
shit.
Okay. All right. Awesome.
um, and to yeah, I'm a decolonization educator, um, as well as like social justice and decolonization educator. They tend to go hand in hand. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think at the intersections, that's kind of where I fits and I sits.
Okay, cool. That's a really badass kind of intersection, I think. Um what originally got you into this work of like social justice and decolonization? Or has it always been part of your
Um,
identity?
I think yeah, like when you have the lived experience of being impacted, disproportionately impacted by social injustice, um, when you start to do the work to get out of those situations, yeah, I think that tends to carve a path into social justice work or just opening up your awareness to it. And yeah, I think once you become aware of it, you may not like follow that path of, hey, let me become a coordinator of a nonprofit organization that works on social justice, but it ends up being the case that you just kind of want to do more, whatever that looks like. um, and so that's sort of how I found my way into this work. Like I used to work in corporate settings. um, I went to previously Ryerson University, now Toronto Metropolitan University for business management. And then I dropped out because I started like working in corporate settings and things like that, started my own business. Um, and then I kind of realized how fucked up it was. Like just super oppressive, super toxic workplaces. The toxic white supremacy patriarchy was very real. Um, and I experienced a lot of like workplace abuse. And so I kind of like pulled back, took some time off to take care of myself. And in that like pause, I started to realize that there was like a lot of shit happening in the world systemically that I was not aware of before.
Okay.
Um, and so that kind of like that triggered something in me to start like looking for answers or just asking a whole lot of questions that I didn't know how to answer. And so that led me to wanting to be educated in something else other than business because I realized that like I didn't know the things that I wanted to know, or I didn't know the things that I wanted to know about the problems that I was facing. So that kind of led me to Trent University because I think off the hop, I was like, oh, everything's related to the environment. Like everything's like environmental. And that in my mind was like what the root was. But then as I started to go to school at Trent for environmental resource sciences, I realized like, holy shit, no, this stuff runs deeper. And then I started to learn about different concepts like colonization, um, which I wasn't aware of before. Like to me, colonial anything was like the name of certain types of architecture, right? Like it was such a strange thing to me. Like colonial era didn't, it wasn't tied to my awareness of like slave trade or or even like my parents' history with immigration, or like even the colonial history of the Philippines. Like I had no
Yeah.
idea about any of these things. And I think part of that too is like just being second generation. You know, my parents didn't want to introduce me to any of these things. They were kind of like, you're better off just learning white history, you know, and we'll just
Yeah.
keep it that way. Um, so yeah, I was kind of like shocked, I guess, when I was like 26, came to Peterborough, started learning about these things. And even then, like Peterborough had a very strong social justice kind of network, like
Right.
sort of like the grassroots network community. So I started to learn about things through that. I guess that's like the long and short of how did I get to where I am? So like over the last 4 years, so I'm 30 now. Um, yeah, I've kind of been like building towards that understanding and just really mobilizing my capacity, my resources to do this work.
Okay, yeah, that's amazing. And I feel like I can relate a lot to it. Like, you know, I'm fourth gen, not second gen, but like I feel like there is a lot of desire to shelter every generation as you know, maybe new immigrants go forward, or like a desire to integrate them into Canadian society based on the oppression that they had originally faced. You know, and also I can relate, like, because like once you kind of like open your mind and open your eyes to decolonization, it does become like fundamental to like everything you observe and see. So I'm curious, like, what can we do to maybe like open more eyeballs to decolonization? Or are you engaged with that work at the CRC?
Um, yeah, I think a lot of the work at CRC ends up being inherently decolonial, which I think it's very interesting because like being in a nonprofit, you kind of like and you know registered under the Canadian government, like you know CRA has a hold on us too. Like every all these different sort of
Right.
institutions that we are accountable to and we are liable to. Um, it it holds us in these frameworks of colonialism or neocolonialism that we can't necessarily break free from, but even within that we can start chipping away with decolonial practices, and just really informing folks about um, what colonialism looks like and how it impacts our lives on very like covert ways,
Mhm.
because when we're aware of that, I think it allows us to kind of like ask questions and seek support and things like that. um I actually forgot what your question was. Sorry, I'm just like, oh wait, now I'm just
Oh,
talking about
it
decolonialism.
was, well, how can we open more eyeballs? It was the thing. Open more eyes to
Right,
this thing,
right.
because it does seem like to be something that is an awakening for people. And I mean, for me, my one friend once said, like, we were playing catch, playing baseball, and he said, well, if that was you know, I was like, really, baseball is a colonial sport in a way. Like, really, everything is kind of like standing on this baseball field in Canada is like, it, like I see
Mhm.
almost everything through this like lens of colonialism. So, yeah, how can we open more eyes to it?
Right. Okay. Right.
Um,
I'm gonna like keep that at the center of my mind. Okay, so how to open more eyes? I think meeting people where they're at is the like it's really the most important thing.
okay,
Because I was listening to your like what you were streaming earlier, and there's some folks that are like, you know, even meeting their basic needs are very difficult right now. And so hitting them with like decolonial things is not that's not exactly gonna land for a lot
true.
of folks because there are some things that they are navigating that's really at the forefront of their mind. Um, but I think when we show folks compassion where they are at, and kind of work with them in that sense, and just really like creating community, like sense of community and support for each other, we're practicing decolonialism. um, and then by doing that, you know, when people start to kind of like they are in better positions, in a better space for themselves to be healthy, well, and stable, then we can start to provide that education um, more wholesomely, because I think that education can kind of start even when we when we like show that compassion, and through our actions we can start talking little bits here and there, planting those seeds of awareness. But it's I just really think that meeting folks where they're at is so important, because when we start to hit people with like just shoving information down their throat, no matter how critical and important that information is, if folks aren't ready to receive it, they're not going to receive it. Those walls go up automatically. It's in one ear, out the other. Right. And
Yeah.
then it does the exact opposite. They start to build like these opinions. It fortifies their walls of resistance and rejection of the opinions that are not opinions, but like the information you're trying to share with them.
Right.
And it becomes harder for the next person who wants to try to inform them. So for me, that's what opening eyeballs looks like. It's meeting folks where they're at. It's seeing how closed their
Yeah.
eyes are and being okay to work with them at that level. And just doing our best to kind of like shift and be flexible and move with them. I'm really
Right.
big on like, being adaptable myself, because I have the capacity to be flexible. Not all folks have that capacity. Some folks are very rigid and set in their ways. And so if I can position myself as the one that is more flexible, then I will move with that rigidity that another person is showing me. And I think energy sharing is really like, that's something that is real in my life. So the more flexible I am with somebody who is very rigid, the more patience I have with that rigidity, the softer they become, over time, obviously. but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's not to say that they will be rigid forever, right? I like to think of it as like water on rock. It's still it will still like create sediment over time, the more you like kind of wash water on rock. But that's not to say that the rock ceases to be rock, or that water ceases to be water. It just means that there's movement and flow, and there's change that continues to happen.
Right. Wow, there were some like really beautiful metaphors there. And yeah, I really love that. So thanks for sharing those ideas. I feel like that really resonates with me. I mean, as someone, I try to be flexible by doing this show as well. I mean, but also as I get older, I'm less and less physically flexible. My body, as my body ages. But yeah, one of the things that we have kind of like met with like rigidity, or that seems very rigid in our community, is the local newspaper, the Peterborough Examiner, that is constantly kind of upholding this status quo. Now we did cover on our channel that you talked to them recently, and they did a piece about you because you were, among other people, were raising concerns about a comedy show that had racist puppets. I guess it's a racist puppet show, I guess is one way to put it. Can you tell us anything more about that or like what's going on there?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think when I got that invitation to like share a statement,
Yeah.
this kind of followed another invitation that had happened earlier in March, and I spoke to Joelle back in March. I think this was when the police report for the highest rate of hate crimes was released,
Right.
and Peterborough was number one. And when that was the first time I ever had an encounter with the Peterborough Examiner, and I just like, I popped off. I was like so upset with the way that they approached me and the amount of time that they gave me to even submit a statement. And I was just like, never reach me again if you're not going to give me ample time, because this is like what the fuck. I was just really upset.
Yeah.
Because I've never met them before. Like, we haven't established a relationship of trust or anything like that. And so this now is like the second time that they reached out, and Joelle, like, she gave me a lot of time to like produce something like a statement, gave me a lot of information. So I do appreciate that. I think part of it does come with just being like setting that boundaries and my expectations and saying, you know what, if we're going to reach out to me for a statement ever again, like these are the conditions, like these are my expectations and things like that. Otherwise, don't.
Yeah.
And so I had never heard of that comedian Jeff Dunham before, but Joelle provided me with this information based on I think what had happened in St. Catharines, because
Right.
St. Catharines is another tour spot where this Jeff Dunham comedian is like scheduled to do a show at. And so um yeah, I read through it and I was just like, who's this Jeff Dunham? Apparently he's very famous, like
Yeah,
like
I know.
the
I had never heard
ninth
of him either.
wealthiest, right? I'm just
It's
like,
like, okay.
okay. Like, how is a ventriloquist like comedian the ninth wealthiest comedian, stand-up comedian in the world as of like 2019? But that's still relatively recent, right? Like that's pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. Like it was just weird. And I did some research and I'm like, none of what I'm seeing is anything that like I don't like it. So I wrote a statement based on that. But because I don't know enough about Jeff Dunham off the bat, like the question was, do you think that Peterborough should cancel? And I was like, yeah, I do think so, but I'm not gonna like do the work to lobby around it because the reality for me is like cancel culture can only do so much, but I think it doesn't send the same message. It's just like kind of like an immediate way of stopping something, but it doesn't actually address the problem, which is that racists still exist in Peterborough and they're still going to support racism in whatever ways that they can. And then you're just going to get a lot of like resistance, a lot of clapback, which is fine. Like I'm here for the clapback. Like that's why I'm in the position that I'm in. Um, but that's not, like I said, like it's not going to open people's eyes. They're
Yeah.
just going to put those walls up even higher and defend their position as a racist, and then defend them not being a racist, like saying that they're not a racist, you know, like then that white fragility kind of appears. And I think even in this statement that I said, I was just like, you know, if we end up doing it this way where we just like kind of go forward with cancel culture, um, we end up bypassing that harder work to raise awareness. So in the end, it just pisses racists off. They end up denying being racist or having racist views anyway. And then we got to do the runaround with white fragility, and that's just exhausting. It is. It's really
Yeah.
exhausting. So that was like it was nicer this time around to work with Joelle because those expectations were met. Um, and you know that's I think a lot of folks will find that about me is that like, you know, if you rub me the wrong way, I'll just kind of like call you out and be like, no, these are my boundaries, these are my expectations, whatever. um but it does create for a better relationship moving forward, so I don't have an issue with um Joelle the reporter, or
Yeah.
Joelle the person and the reporter kind of like doing the work that they're doing. The Examiner though, I mean, like I wouldn't buy it, so
Yeah, I wouldn't buy it either. That's why we get through their paywall as often as we can. Um, and yeah, and I totally agree with you that like, you know, if let's say we were to rally the community and put all of our effort and focus on this canceling this show, it's like we would have changed zero systemic problems, right? That we are facing as a community. So, someone in chat is asking if there is a planned action to protesting the show seriously. Um, so I don't know if you can speak to that, but it seems like from the answer you've already given that, you know, it's really not maybe something that deserves our attention.
um yeah, so one of the things that I had mentioned too, because I think Joel had alluded to that, you know, like, is there going to be any kind of like any mobilization around that? And I was just like, if the community wants it, like, you know, if we hear
Yeah.
enough from the community that like we will respond to that, of course, like we will take action in that way, but it comes with taking steps, right? Making sure that we're doing things safely, making sure folks are kept safe, because we know how violent some folks can be in the opposition, you know, like racist be
Yeah.
racist, right? Like they're pretty violent folks. And we've seen that too at I think when Jagmeet Singh had come to Peterborough, there's a lot of violence, a lot of harassment, and we want to do a good thing in a good way. And sometimes that does mean like mobilizing forces and rallying. I think rallying is very effective because it is a demonstration of what the people want. Um,
Right.
and it can affect policy. It can make change for the better. Um, so I'm not saying that that's like that there's no effect to it, or that we, you know, yeah, I just think that it's not within my capacity to do it without being called to do it. If that makes
Right.
sense. So it's yeah, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And you're right. Like it's not like a decision that like just one person or the CRC can just make. It's a community decision, and if there is enough will there to do something like that. So, um why, I guess first, if we were to like spell it out for someone, like why are these puppets racist? Like why is it racist? If
Mm.
someone said, "Oh, it's just comedy, it's just a joke, it's not racist," maybe you just don't get the joke. Like could you give them like a answer as to like why?
It's funny because like I'm a huge fan of answering questions with more questions.
Okay.
But I think like the biggest question is like, is Jeff Dunham not a white man and solely a white man? What ties does Jeff Dunham actually have? Um, racially, culturally, ethically, ancestrally to Ahmed the dead pirate and
So
Jose
I think it's the dead
Jalapeno,
terrorist.
the dead
Um
terrorist. Thank you.
which,
Sorry.
I guess they left the pirate culture unscathed, and so they could attack a more specific stereotype.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, see, and there you go. Like that is just that kind of went over my head, but yeah, that's like it's even more so, and it's
Yeah.
not subtle. Like it's not subtle. So if folks are trying to deny it, yeah, I mean that is hugely problematic. It's just yeah, it's hugely problematic. And I think the racist part about it too is like it's having to lean on these characters who are obvious stereotypes of um, Middle Eastern, um, like I guess the propaganda uh, that the American West portrays of the Middle East, and that the
Yeah.
American West portrays of Latinx Mexican culture. It's like, why do you need to lean on that
Right.
to make a joke funny? Why do you need to punch down on these communities and reinforce these stereotypes for your white audience? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's super racist. It's because it's not his lived experience at all. Jeff Dunham cannot claim ancestry, cultural heritage, ethnic background. None of those things can he claim to either of those cultures to even make those jokes in a way where he's like, oh, okay, well, like I grew up with these stereotypes through my lived experience because this was my family setting, or because my uncle Joe was like this, or like whatever, right?
Right.
um and so that's not the case. These are just, it's reinforcement of these negative stereotypes that do more harm and incite violence, I think, in our communities. So
Yeah. One of the comments I kept seeing again and again in response to the article that the Examiner published was, if you don't like it, then just don't buy a ticket. Easy as that. Um like, and for me that felt just like a super, it's like we're not allowed to call out racism, even if it's just our opinion on what racism is, and like uh but we just have to not support it and allow it to continue on in our community, so one thing that really kind of like makes me nervous about an event like this is that it becomes like a rallying cry, and like for the people who are like actually racist within our community.
mhm.
And when people like yourself step up as like anti-racist, then they are stepping up as like anti-racist, and it creates this like really kind of like toxic culture within our community. So, well, obviously the toxicity is stemming from a certain place, like the comedy show. So,
Mhm.
um, just want to thank you for stepping up and speaking so like eloquently to like the examiner as well. Um, obviously this is all also like a culture war issue, right? Like as we said, it's we're not affecting systemic change here. Um, but these tend to be the things that get people's attention. So, what are some of the things that you or the CRC is working on that are potentially more important than racist puppets?
Yeah, more important I think is building capacity in BIPOC community. Um, for sure, because folks always say like, oh, BIPOC are so resilient. I mean, we have to. It's literally survival, right? Because
Yeah,
otherwise, we're walking down the street, somebody's calling you like Jose Jalapeno, right? Because they went to in a stand up comedy, right? And then they see something like that, and then they see somebody who is brown. That person may have absolutely um, no connection to Mexican heritage, and yet they are being called something because of that. And like it's it's things like that that bring people to our door that like we need to have advocacy for folks in the community who experience racism, but at the same time we need to build a community for BIPOC, um, because right now I think a lot of BIPOC that do come to our door tell us how isolating it is. When they experience racism, it tends to be more so the case that they experience more racism from white people than they experience community with BIPOC. And
right.
I think that's very problematic, right? Because we should be here for each other. We should be creating these lines of solidarity, or circles, networks of solidarity, not lines. But that to me is like, that's the really important work that we have to do. It's not to say that we don't address the anti-racist. Um,
Yeah,
I just think that there are some things that we are able to do and keep our communities as safe and as healthy as we have the capacity to do. Um, so I mean, like that's one of the biggest things that we are working on is building capacity in our community through our programming. Our events and our programming kind of go hand in hand because we're continually trying to build community through the events that we host. And then through our programming, like we have BIPOC peer support running in October. We will be hosting community consultations um, in and around like October, November, um, so that we can develop a program for 2023. And then this is funded by OTF that will allow us to work with racialized community members and better understand what kind of impacts they experience, like the adversities and the struggles that they experience or may still be experiencing as a result of the pandemic, and how that may have disproportionately affected them being racialized. So we don't necessarily know what that program looks like yet because we are still in the consultation and research phase, but
okay.
that kind of programming is more important than racist puppets, but it's not to say that we don't learn from the racist puppets, or the
Yeah,
communities that are paying to see these racist puppets.
right.
Um so yeah, there's that piece, and there's also just like raising awareness, and getting funding for a communication specialist because we need to be able to disseminate some of this education, and we don't have a communications person, which is that makes it very difficult to reach folks, again, where they are at. um,
Yeah.
so yeah, those are some of the things that we are working on that I think are more important than Jeff Dunham.
Yeah, that sounds really great. Someone is asking in the chat, and maybe this could be kind of our last question of the day. Do you have any plans related to the municipal elections that are coming up, or do you have any people that you would like to throw your support behind or allude to throwing your support behind?
um Okay, so I still like I'm just because of the whole like nonpartisan sort of thing, like where we need
Yeah.
to give like all candidates equal coverage. So I'm just not gonna I'm not even gonna go there. But
Okay, fair.
in terms of what we have planned, we've been in talks of like planning around like having something um in collaboration with the Center for Women and Trans People, the Court the World Issues Center. To be honest, like I've been sick all week, so I haven't been able to follow up. And I think there are other organizations that are involved with that planning as well. But it's really just to give folks an opportunity to hear from the candidates
Yeah.
and let them know what their platforms are.
Okay.
Because I think, yeah, a lot of folks, you know, they just see like the signs and they're like, what's that all about? You know, oh, okay, election season's coming up, you know, like those
Yeah.
lawn signs. Um, do a little Google search, but that's about as far as it goes. Some people don't even vote, you know, and that's
Yeah,
really
of
unfortunate. But like
course.
I think if we can raise awareness for folks, just showing them the importance of voting, um, you know, and really kind of like helping folks understand how elections even work in general, or even how city council works. I spoke with Kemi a couple months ago, and she was just talking to me about how complex city council is, you know, and just
Yeah.
how non-transparent some things are, even for council, even for people running for council.
Right.
Um, because it is, I don't know what it is about the system, but they just try to make it as complex and difficult to understand and navigate as possible. Um, but yeah, I mean, even for me, like trying to do that research and figuring out how city council works, like what is it that city council does? What do they vote on? What do they have like the authority to change? What do they not have the authority to change? Um,
Yeah.
all of those things, you got to do a lot of independent research to kind of figure it out. That information is not just there and available to you. So I think you know, all of that is a lot of things, but I think it would be nice to have some kind of an event or information talking series or whatever, just to help folks who really don't have the time to do that independent work um, access that information in like in a very concise, easy, digestible way. And then that way they can make a better informed decision when they do vote, and also encourage them to vote. So I don't know about the plans, but like I said, like I haven't followed up in a week because I've been sick. So
Yeah, that's fair. And you're totally right. It's even who some as someone who's like super interested and our community is super interested, it's hard to it's hard to access that information and make sense of it all. So, um I am wondering before you go if you could shout out your like where we can find you personally if you want, or if there are any ways that we can find and follow and support the CRC. If you would like to shout out those places.
yeah, for sure. So I would just say go through CRC's Instagram. That's Race Relations PTBO. Um, we have our website, which is like going through some changes. Again, we don't have a communication specialist, but that is race relations Peterborough
Okay.
.org. And if folks want to like email me, my email's up there, but it's just my name, CZARINA at racerelationspeterborough.org.
Okay. Awesome. I'll make sure to link all that info in the description or wherever in a place that is easy to find. And wait, one last question is the question I ask
Yeah.
everybody is what is your favorite animated movie?
What's my favorite animated movie? Uh,
If you
oh
have
my
one.
gosh.
If you don't,
I'm just
it's okay.
I'm like so deep in what like just anime right now. I'm watching Bleach. So I
Okay.
can't think of a movie, but I'm like watching something right now that's like
Okay.
it's right at the forefront of my mind.
True. All right.
um,
Nice.
yeah, that's sure.
Wait, what? Sorry, you cut out there.
No, that's where I'm at. I'm like I don't
Oh,
have a
okay.
favorite movie because I'm always watching different animated things. Um,
Okay. All
yeah,
right. So would you consider yourself like an anime stan?
Um, I don't know, but my son really appreciates that I watch anime because he can just refer me to things and like talk about it with him. I didn't used to like
True.
anime before because I didn't know
Okay.
about it. But then he told when he was 8, he told me to watch Attack on Titan with him.
All right.
And I was like, okay, sure, watch the first episode. I'm like, wow, what is this? I'm
Yeah.
like, who said you were allowed to watch this stuff? He's like, oh, well, I already finished the season. I'm like, all right, I guess I'll watch it with you. So then I was
Okay.
hooked after that.
Yeah. All right. Wow, that's so interesting. So, okay, well, thank you so much, Serena. I'm so happy we got through the technical difficulties and we're able to do this. And honestly, like if anything ever comes up and you feel like you would love to talk about it more, you're definitely welcome to come back on the show. And I hope that we can continue to like check in the community as well. So thank you so much.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having me, Danny. Stay green.
All right. Oh yeah, I'm super. I forgot how green I am, and oh god, yeah, you're seeing a totally different version than everyone else. But yeah, all right, I will. Okay, be
All right,
green.
take care.
Okay,
Bye.
bye. Oh my god. Uh, yeah, I don't know what is going on with freaking Zoom, man. But if you want to take a look at what I look like, basically what Zarina could see the whole time was me looking like this. What the hell? I still don't even understand what's going on here.